I'll let people know that we're going to just wait a few extra minutes before we get started, just allowing people to come on in. So anyone on the line, just know it'll be a few minutes before we officially get started. So again, for folks on the line, SJ, thanks so much. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes, let a few more people come in. You know, even with the power of this technology, people oftentimes are scrambling to get connected because we've got quite a few more people signed up who want to participate, who've not yet signed in for this. So we're just going to give it a little bit more and probably get started by 4:35, I guess. We'll definitely get rolling so we don't keep people too late tonight. So we'll give it a couple more minutes. I like that, SJ. That was cool.
Sorry, Paul.
That was cool. I thought. SJ, I guess we'll let people come on in as they come on in. You know, but I know we're expecting quite a few more, but hopefully they'll be able to join us here after we get started. But for those who are here, we'll get rolling. So I want to thank you, for folks who are here, people who signed up. This is our inaugural Ask the Experts event. So this is spin-off connected to the Heart of a Building's first video launch. Some of you may have joined us when we launched the video officially back on October 1st. But we kind of think we had a second launch because we got to have our first episode, the hour-long episode showcasing a commercial building retrofit, a single-family home, and then an affordable housing multifamily on Rocky Mountain PBS just this past Earth Day week. So on April 24th and April 25th. And they're going to do us the service of airing them again in July and in August. So we're really happy about that. But why we want to do Ask the Experts is we want to give people a chance who have seen the videos, know about us, curious about building science, to have a venue where they can come hear from experts in the field, me being one, I suppose, but more importantly from guests like Ben, who we have with us today, to basically get questions, pose questions, get them answered about what to do to make, highly sustainable buildings happen. So that's why we're here. That's why we're going to hang out for the next hour. And I'm so privileged. Well, I'll start with me. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Kreischer, executive producer and host. There we go. Executive producer and host for Heart of a Building. I've been long involved with the energy efficiency business since 1997 when I started lightly treading, and now up through to today, and work that we're doing in homes and buildings through PCB engineering. But I love what we're doing with Heart of a Building, get these why stories out there about why people make high performance buildings and the challenges they face and how they overcome them, and have that be a gift to you guys. But today I get to have the pleasure of having Ben Van Hoose, who's the regional president for the Fort Collins branch from Alpine Bank, joining us because the survey responses we got from people were, you'd like to hear more about financing around net zero or high performance homes and buildings. And Ben is here to help with that. And we're going to take questions on that. But Ben, it's been really a pleasure getting to know you in the brief time we've been chatting over the last week or so. But it's been really great over the past several months getting to know Alpine Bank and everything that you guys are doing, because I'm very impressed by the green team vision that's been around since the early 2000s, I guess since 2003. And I'd love to hear more, have people who are attending hear more about what that vision is behind the green team. And if you'll share more with us, and if I left anything off on your title or anything, please chime in and add to that. But we'd love to have you share with us a bit about that. And then we'll do some video clips from the first video and then take questions from the audience and have a discussion. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you, Paul. I appreciate you having me on. And it was great to watch the program, the first Heart of a Building, and see some of the incredible projects that you guys featured on there. I thought that was really exciting. Alpine Bank was founded in 1973 in Carbondale, Colorado. And over the last close to 50 years, we've expanded to 43 locations across Colorado and about $5 billion in assets. But one of the really neat things that we did was in 2003, we had an employee approach senior management and say, hey, we live in all these really great communities in Colorado and we give a lot back to the communities, but what are we doing to keep those communities healthy from an environmental standpoint and keep them as beautiful as they are? And, what are we doing to help sustain those efforts? And we kind of really looked at it, Paul, and had to be honest and say, well, not much. So out of that, we kind of formed a grassroots effort that we called the Green Team in 2003. And it was really formalized in 2005 when we created an environmental management system, to where we really said, well, we can talk about being environmentally friendly and we can encourage our customers and our community members to be environmentally friendly, but what are we doing as a bank to really lessen our impact? And through that, we did a lot of really great things where we really adopted some standards that Colorado had set at that time to reduce energy and water consumption and fuel. And that was kind of our catalyst kickoff. And from there, we had some really great momentum at the start. So in 2006, we actually earned our ISO 14001 certification, which, to my knowledge, at least today, we're still the only financial institution in the nation that has that certification. And it's it's definitely rigorous. It's tough to get and it's hard to keep. And we go through annual audits to make sure that we continue to do the right things. And part of that really rolls into phase 2, which was it's okay for what we're doing, but how are we reaching out to the community and educating our community members about these types of items and helping them with resources that they may not have access to, so they can be more educated in that sphere. And then phase 3 was really offer financial incentives to do the right thing. And, out of that, our senior management blessed, and it's still in effect today, that any qualified green loan would receive a 50 basis point reduction off of our normal rate that we offer. Obviously, if we have a floor on that product, it can't go below the floor, and it doesn't change any of our standard underwriting. But it is a great incentive that we're trying to give our customers, that if they do have a qualified project, we'll give them a little bit of a break on their interest rate for doing the right thing and implementing that. So it's been really great. I've been able to serve with David and the other team members in the past, and now that I've moved to Fort Collins recently, I get to serve with them again. So it's a great team that does a lot and have really taken some big steps at Alpine Bank to help us reduce our environmental impact and really educate some of our community members. So pretty great initiative.
No, that's fantastic. And yeah, like I said, David Miller is who Ben was referencing there is a president, regional president. Is that correct? Or
no, I think he was kind of the head of our green team for many, many years.
Okay. But he's a great guy. Yeah, great guy. So it's like, we're looking forward to, I'll let you know, it's like, Green Team, or I should say, Alpine Bank and the Green Team are doing nothing to sponsor tonight's event, but we're actually looking forward to showcasing one of their buildings in an upcoming episode. We've been looking at one of their buildings in the Ridgeway area, also one in the Rifle area. They've done a great one in Boulder as well, and they're going to be working on this one in Fort Collins. That one's still in design phase, but I'm really impressed with what they're doing with their buildings. So we look forward to showcasing one of them, one of those buildings in the near future. So with that, what I'd like to do is let's encourage everyone in the audience to be thinking about what questions you might have when it comes to financing around, a renovation project or a remodel project or new construction project, whether that's, single family home or a multifamily home or commercial building, just things that would come to mind for you that we can talk about. And if you have some stories to share, I know it can be hard to do that in the chat area, and maybe if you have a great story, we can bring you up and ask you to share it, with others, just put you on audio or something, get you in. But think of questions you have, think of challenges you might have had in trying to deal with financing before to do a project. So have those, work on those in mind. But what we're going to do now for about next 5 minutes or so, we're going to bring up some video clips from the first episode, the first Heart of a Building episode, and just watch those, because these are all like clips that have to do with financing that were done in a couple of the projects that we showcased, to just give you a little extra food for thought. But look at that, have questions, and then share your thoughts and ideas with us, and we'll share those with the group after we come back from the videos.
First Universalist Church members in Denver are a great example of living their values through the renovation of their building. The whole congregation got together and decided to shoot for zero emission, not an easy or cheap goal, but one they truly believed in. Let's head inside and find out more from these amazing people. We're talking to church members John Bringenberg and Milt Hetrick, Reverend Dr. Elaine Paraslua, and Communications Coordinator Jessica Montgomery about their goal to design a zero carbon footprint building. Can you tell me a little bit about the story and the process of how people came together, especially around the funding portions of this project, to make it happen? Because it's a great story.
It is, yes. We had a capital campaign for the building renovation well underway, and working with the architects, when a member-driven initiative, a very bold one, came up to add a sustainable energy system, and also add the cost for a sustainable energy system.
It's challenging for several reasons. First off, it added more than 10% to the cost of the total building project.
And being understandably debt avoidant, the church just asked, can we go ask for additional gifts specifically for the sustainable energy system, and then close the gap as needed with a member loan.
So the community, as I heard it, came together and said, we're not going to try and get the maximum dollar out of the church that we can. We want to give a gift, but we need to get our money back, plus get 1.5%, you said, interest on it?
Right.
In exchange. That sounds like a beautiful win-win.
Yeah, we thought that was a rather unique approach because going in, the first response we got from just about everybody was, we can't afford that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, member-led, member-driven effort. We exceeded our goal in the additional member gifts, specifically to add the sustainable energy system to the building project. And then with the remaining funds, members came together and formed a general partnership, the Seventh Principle Partnership.
Cool.
And that bold move paid off. We were able to see the project completed.
This amazing building is a manifestation of many beautiful principles and values that come from the Unitarian Universalist Church. And I'd love to learn more about that.
I would say the general value of Unitarian Universalism is to live your faith, to live out the principles. And we have 7 of them, and they're about democracy, about how you treat one another, the dignity and worth of every human. But the one that's important to this project is the 7th principle. And that one is we are all part of an interdependent web of all life, and that we are to recognize our equity with all other beings, sentient and not, and the earth, and to care for the earth as stewards.
Well, early on, we did our homework and tried to define what I'll call the harm that we were doing to our planet, and quantified it in the context of tons of CO2 that this facility was introducing into the atmosphere. And what we learned was kind of shocking. We learned that because of the electricity that we bought from our utility company, Xcel Energy, they in turn were dumping about 50 metric tons of CO2 a year into the atmosphere, and we were buying natural gas from them and burning that on site in 10 different gas furnaces and dumping ourselves another 50 metric tons into the atmosphere. We also were aware that there are alternatives to doing that.
So, John, tell me what this great performance boils down to in dollars and cents for you on your utility bills on an annual basis.
Our historic bills on the building, which was a little smaller before, was over $20,000 per year. We are now spending about 20% of that amount with the new systems in place. And I would say that the vast majority of those charges are considered base charges and demand charges.
That's fantastic. That's really fantastic. For every effort that brings change in our world, a champion is required. A person or persons who see the vision inside of themselves and then shares it with others. In the case of First Universalist Church, it was a community of people envisioning the need for their building to serve as an example of a structure that is in harmony with nature. And they succeeded.
Oops. Amy, you may have to mute your mic, I think, maybe. I don't know what that was. Maybe it was me. But, well, thanks, everybody. I hope that was a little recap for people. Hope you've had a chance to see, the full episode. But one of the things that pops to mind for me, Ben, I'll just start with a question towards you, is that, you and I, when we chatted about this, you had just had a chance to finish seeing that first episode, and it was a creative way they went about doing things to try and, solve that. They had the benefit of a group of people, several hundred people not all several hundred participated, but a segment of their several hundred people in the congregation coming together to say, we will put together, this fund, and basically have it, be something with a relatively low return on investments, 1.5% annual over 15 years. But they did that to say, let's come together, make this a legitimate way for people to make a donation, but not, have some return basically on that. So I don't know, as a banker, have you ever heard of something like that? Ever been involved in something like that? And just what are your thoughts about that being replicated, I guess, if you can speak to that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've obviously never been involved in anything like that. I think it's a really unique approach that they were able to do two things really well. They were able to get a pretty good capital call from their member base for essentially a gift to help. And obviously, anytime you can raise a substantial amount of capital, it's obviously going to help kind of fund the gap. But, they're able to think of their financing in a pretty unique way and go to their congregation and get, terms that they weren't going to be able to get anywhere else in the market, 1.5% over 15 years. And so I thought it was a really unique way to finance it. I think the really neat thing to look at from a banker perspective is that they took essentially utility costs of a little over $20,000 and reduced them to $4,000. So, they had annual savings of around $16,000. And, if you do kind of the amortization on their loan of $240,000 at 1.5% over 15 years, you come up with annual debt servicing of about right under $18,000. So, really they were almost able to cover all of their debt servicing on the loan they raised just by the reduction in utility costs. And they added square footage to their building. So probably if you took into account what they would have spent normally on that additional square footage, chances are they probably are covering their entire debt servicing payment just with the offset that they had in utility costs. So really no difference in net cash to them on an operating basis, which is always pretty impressive to see.
That's a huge part of that. Like you said, they were estimating their savings. I mean, they're still tweaking the building with some things with the ground source heat pumps, and they're looking at expanding their solar PV on that building. But yeah, they were estimating around $20,000 a year in savings. And like you said, it's, for them, what they've done is basically make it a net positive for them. It's like, so that's a beautiful way to look to that. And yeah, in my nearly 25 years, I guess at this point, I had not come across some group like that had done it quite so uniquely as far as how they're going about the financing to make that happen. But again, for people in the audience, if you have any unique stories about how you've gone about financing, or again, questions that you'd have, send them on in through the chat area and we'll bring those up. Let's see, we've got another question. We might have another question popping in here. So one thing, Ben, I know when you and I were talking, you have a great history of you have a history anyway of being involved with financing solar PV projects, especially in your role when you're working more on the Western Slope, because you were in the Grand Junction branch for quite a while. Is that correct? Or where were you on the Western Slope?
Yeah.
How long were you there?
Well, just over 15 years.
Okay. Yeah, great. So, it's an area of the state that has some great solar resource, but I know it's only been the last 10 years really where it's been made economically viable by the utility companies to really do solar. But are there elements that you can speak to in what you did with working with people on solar PV projects, and challenges or victories or things that could be shared with others on working around solar PV?
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of an interesting journey through that initial onslaught of PV hitting the market. We had a lot of companies that kind of came to market to provide that service, and we were able to really sit down with a lot of them and speak to them, because that was the biggest piece, is that there was demand in the market, but not everybody had the capital to just pay for that, even with the rebate structure that Excel had at that time. And then some of our county was split into, Grand Valley Power, which didn't quite have the rebate horsepower that Excel did. But, it was a really interesting time. So we worked with a lot of people to try to get those financed. early on. And then, during that process too, you also had solar leasing come out as kind of a new thing on the market. So I think a lot of people who didn't have the capital, started really leasing solar on their homes for no cost or minimal cost down to them, and kind of structured it that way as well. But we were able to do several projects, and honestly, most of those projects probably happened one of two ways. So people either came in and got a second mortgage, a HELOC or a HE loan on their home if they had the equity, and we used the equity to fund the project, or they went to the secondary market and did a cash out refinance and kind of wrapped it back into a 15 or 30-year fixed. And took their equity and did it that way as well. So that was really most of what we witnessed happening during that time. We're kind of using those conventional methods. Like I said, the leasing was interesting because it gave people another option to get into solar with little capital provided up front. So it's kind of morphed out of that a little bit as well. And now people are really looking at buying their systems outright again.
Right. Yeah. It's been an evolving market, for sure, as far as, from leasing to purchase and those elements of solar. Do you have any sense, Ben, of how many projects Alpine Bank was involved with when it came to solar?
I mean, I probably couldn't put a number on it, but I would say in Grand Junction, it was, over 10, I would say, kind of throughout that time period. And then company-wide, many more than that. So I'm sorry, I don't have a great number that we did.
Yeah, put you on the spot with that one, but
that's okay.
Yeah, so it's like, when it comes to HELOCs and refinancing, I mean, that's a common area that I've dealt with homeowners in particular. Actually, there was a couple of multifamily projects that I worked on where they took advantage of just refinancing to do things to make the buildings more energy efficient over time. So, and there's been a few occasions, if there's anyone that's listening in that's an energy rater, you guys know about this, but, as an energy rater, we've been able to use energy ratings on occasion to help finance improvements, to have an energy efficient mortgage or an energy efficient, refinance, or I guess an energy efficient loan basically for refinance. But, those, I mean, with the market where it is, with the great amount of, increased valuation of properties, it is one of the strongest and best areas to take money out and invest it back in. And if you can do something along the lines of what First Universalist Church did, on a smaller scale, if it's for your home, obviously, but, to do something like that and have the assistance and figure out like, well, how can I make this work where it's like a fast return on that investment can be a really smart way to go. Make yourself more comfortable, maybe have more space and do this. But, you and I touched on this before, Ben, but do you have any history with working with energy raters and doing those types of financings of properties, or is it something you have some familiarity with anyway?
Yeah. So, I mean, we actually had the chance to work with some energy raters on most of our buildings down in Grand Junction and kind of across our footprint. When we were looking at how to make our buildings more efficient, we were, getting a blower door test and understanding, from a real base level where we were losing energy and, some of those low cost options that we could fix first before we tackled bigger projects. So I know at the location that I was managing at the time, we really did some stuff to fix our front door where we were leaking a lot of energy out of our front door that the customers used. Some additional information. We actually had a big pyramid structure on our bank. And the heat loss that we had in the ceiling of that was pretty substantial. And so we were able to actually put kind of a stratification fan up there that really blew a column of air, almost a jet stream of air back down, and kind of mushroom clouded our hot air back through our comfort zone.
Just to be picky for a moment, Ben, it was a destratification fan. But
yeah, thank you.
That's okay.
A destratification fan. Right. So it was actually really neat to watch that work and to really see how that changed kind of the air mixing in our building and really kind of led to some efficiencies. So from that standpoint, I have had experience with that. I think from a financing standpoint, we don't really use it a lot on the HELOC and HELoan products on commercial refinances, but we do always encourage our customers to look into that, because we want our customers to understand what their energy usage looks like. And I think when you look at First Universalist, you heard in the little clip that you played, and one thing that really kind of resonated with me in that is they did a lot of homework up front to understand what design would best suit them and where they were inefficient to begin with and what they could do to correct that before they started spending a lot of money on some of the more high dollar energy efficiency measures. So when we have a customer that comes and talks to us about wanting to do energy efficient loans, it's something that we usually ask of, do you know what your consumption is? And do you know what the payback is? What do the rebates look like? Have you worked with your providers to do those sorts of things and really understand, are there low cost methods that you could do that are really going to help maximize the benefit that you're going to get off of whatever improvement you're looking to do? So it's something that we always encourage. We don't necessarily require it on our side. But we're encouraging our customers to better educate themselves on what their current consumption is and where they're losing energy. I think where it really comes into play, and it's definitely not an area of my expertise, but if you're looking at an energy efficiency mortgage, they're going to require that and as part of that process. And for those on the call that don't really know what that is, I guess on a really high level, it's either a mortgage that you can get to construct a home with energy efficiency measures in it, or you can even come up with a plan to retrofit an existing home with energy efficient measures, and they'll set aside the capital for you to do that after you close, so you can complete those. But they do like to see those energy audits being done so they understand kind of what the offset is. And then a lot like we kind of talked about, they use that to help you qualify for a little bit more home, because they can really quantify what your savings are on a monthly basis and understand that with those savings, you have more available cash flow to service debt. So it's a way that borrowers could potentially qualify for a little bit more purchase price because of the monthly cash flow savings that they have with the energy efficiency measures that they're either going to retrofit or incorporate in the house. So I know we talked about it. You have some experience with that, but it hasn't maybe gained as much traction as you would hope. But it's an option that's available.
Yeah, it's available to people, and there's so many energy raters across Colorado and really across the country now. And it's just great, that Alpine Bank is a financial institution that works with that type of thing. So it just makes it that much easier. If someone's like, I'm going to look at my options for financing and how could I do this to make my home or my building more energy efficient, and that you guys are, offering that you're there doing that. So, I mean, what you described there, Ben, was just really like, you mentioned it in your intro that, Alpine takes great pride in being an advocate, for its customers. So, I mean, that's really what you're doing is like, I don't know, it reminds me of being like a financial broker, I guess, basically like someone helping you with investments. Well, you're doing it when it comes to this, saying, okay, what are the things that you should be asking for? What are the, what you should be looking into to figure out how efficient your home is now, and what would the steps be to have a blower door test done or find an energy rater and make things more, find out where the problems are and where the best low-hanging fruit opportunities are to improve your building, and pull that together, with getting contractors in. And but I think that's great that you guys are doing it. It's an old adage. I mean, what you're doing, like you said, trying to help them with that before they might do something like, let's just put solar on the house. And it's an old adage that we use in the industry of saying, well, you got to eat your vegetables before you have your dessert, type of thing, because it really is. I mean, I've been involved with projects where people are like, hey, I've got a pretty old home. I don't really want to spend the money here, but I want to put solar on it. And that's good in lots of ways, but it's amazing that one project I can think of, they had to put, I'd say, about 40% more solar on their property. And they happened to have it. It was a ground mount property, an old place that's up near Table Mesa, as a matter of fact. But basically, they had to put a lot more solar on if they would have invested in making improvements on the insulation, air sealing. They did do new windows, but they didn't do really anything with insulation and air sealing. They could have saved themselves a lot as far as really getting to their goal that they'd hoped for, which was to get close to net zero energy, with their utility bills. So it is really good, and it's good that there are people, at Alpine Bank that are advocating in those ways to help their customers know what they should be, the right questions to be asking and where to go look for things. So one thing, Ben, we haven't touched on yet at all, and so there's a question that's come up, is basically, around CPACE financing for commercial buildings. I've been kind of alluding to residential things with, doing like refinancing of your mortgage and having an energy rating done, which is really residential or multifamily, not really commercial based type things, to do a refinance thing through an energy rating. But do you want to touch on like CPACE, if you don't mind explaining a little bit what that is, and why or why not Alpine Bank is offering that, but it is a tool that's out there for people to look at on the commercial building side and multifamily side too, for that matter.
Yeah. So yeah, it's strictly a commercial product. Colorado opted not to do the residential portion of PACE, which some other states have done. But essentially, CPACE is kind of multifaceted. It's a state-ran program, but each individual county has to adopt the program, as well as the county administers the special assessment through their property tax rolls. So it may or may not work for people in certain counties that haven't adopted it. If your county hasn't adopted it, it's just not available to you, unfortunately. But if your county has adopted it, it's definitely a financing mechanism that's out there. I don't think it's a great financing mechanism for every project or every borrower, but definitely a viable financing mechanism for those that really fit and have alignment. So essentially, what you do is you take your project, and it can be new construction, it can be retrofit, either one, and you get it vetted through the program, and you definitely have to have an energy audit on that. They usually try to match the term of that loan, or it's not a loan necessarily, it's a special assessment, but they try to match the term of that to the useful life of the equipment. They also like to look at, what the total payback is going to be on that. So essentially, they build the loan and the interest based on the term all into one lump. There's a little bit of a fee that goes to the state and the county for administering the program. Then they divide that total amount over your term and come up with a special assessment. The benefits, I think, to a commercial owner are that it's really off balance sheet financing. It's not really debt that you put on your balance sheet because it runs with the property. You can't really separate it off. It's non-recourse in nature generally, so those commercial customers don't necessarily have to provide a personal guarantee on it. And then if you have tenants that are on triple net leases and you're the landlord, you can pass those costs generally to your tenants on a triple net basis, because it really kind of attaches itself to the property tax. So
Right.
the same tenants that are getting the benefit of the improvements that you're putting in through lower operating costs with reduced electricity or more efficient spaces, should have that same available cash flow to kind of help pay for some of those improvements. So for certain borrowers and certain projects, I think it's definitely viable. Tracy and Ken at CPACE are really good resources if people are thinking about doing that. You can go onto the CPACE website and, one, see if your county participates, and two, kind of get some more information on how that works. Alpine Bank is not a capital provider in that program. There's a host of capital providers out there. And really, I think they'll have a listing of those on their website. There's even brokers out there right now that, much like brokering commercial loans, there's brokers out there now that are brokering CPACE loans. So you can get in contact with a broker, and they put that out to several capital providers and see if anybody's interested in that deal, and really go through the vetting process, go through the energy audit, make sure that it works for the state, and there you go. It's definitely a viable program. It's still pretty new in Colorado. There's definitely gaining some traction. So anybody that's interested in that, I would really recommend getting on the CPACE website and reaching out to Ken or Tracy for more information.
I thank you, Ben. That's a great overview on that. What I can add is that one of the gentlemen that was shown in the clip from First Universalist Church, John Bringenberg, who was talking, about the technical details, about the building. He actually does do CPACE financing through a company called Petros Pace Finance. So there's an example, but like Ben said, yes, you can just like Google, CPACE or things like that, and the office that he referenced and the website that's there to help as a resource if anyone's looking for that type of commercial financing along those lines. So cool. Ben, what I think I want to do is just, because I want to squeeze in a few more video clips. We're going to let
Paul, actually, Francis asked a question that I just want to address because
it
deals with PACE. He asked what's the biggest holdup for banks not wanting to subordinate to PACE financing. So
okay, go for that.
Yeah,
I'm sure I haven't missed questions, but go ahead.
Thank you, Francis. I appreciate that. And for those who don't really know, there's a subordination process that would happen if you had a first deed of trust on your property. So your first lien holder would have to agree to subordinate to the PACE financing. And essentially why that is because the way that special assessment is structured with property taxes, it would supersede a lien holder's position in terms of repayment. So, I think most financial institutions are really going to look at that amount of CPACE going in front of them and really have to calculate what they think that does to their overall loan to value. And I think that's probably, Francis, where you get some holdup for banks not wanting to do that is as it supersedes our lien. We really wonder what happens in a default situation and how does that affect our loan to value and our ability to be repaid through that process. Also, CPACE runs with the property for the entire term. So if our borrower wants to exit that property, they have to exit it by either they can choose to pay off the CPACE assessment, or they have to sell it with that assessment intact and the new buyer has to assume that and agree to it. So there could be some banks that worry about the marketability of the property and what happens to that when they have to sell with that special assessment and essentially increased property taxes. So I couldn't speak to all financial institutions, but I think those are probably the two largest pieces, is probably the biggest being that it supersedes our debt and could erode equity in the property that we think we have. And probably two, we wonder a little bit about what it does to ongoing marketability if we had to sell it through foreclosure or if our borrower had to sell it to try to repay the debt. Hopefully that answers your question. If you have a follow-up, please let me know.
You got a big thank you from him on that. So thank you, Ben, on that, very good answer on that. So yeah, what I want to do is, like, folks, if you have additional questions come to mind, I do want to squeeze in like a few more little video clips from the first episode right now, but we'll bring those up for like another 3 to 4 minutes, something like that, and then take additional questions and see where we're at with that. But SJ, if you would be so kind.
Frank is at the top of the industry. These all-electric homes, both net zero energy and net zero emission, are truly built from the perspective of demonstrating independence from fossil fuels. Passive solar design, insulated concrete forms for construction, Energy Star windows, ground source heat pumps for heating and cooling, and so many other cool features show just what is possible in the future of home building. We're lucky enough to get a tour from the owner of this impressive home. So let's go take a look. I need one of these. We're talking to homeowner Wes Geary and builder and designer Con Frank about what makes this home so cutting edge.
Homes, modern technology, modern new things. And so when my Aunt Maxine was here visiting from Texas, we went and looked at some really expensive homes because just for fun. And some of the homes down around First in Quebec were being built with the geothermal and things like that, and The people were happy to tell you all about the features of the home, and they were 1.4, $1.5 million homes.
Yeah.
Well, that's really nice, you know. Get out of here quick, you know. But I got interested in this home again because it was in the neighborhood. It was so different, and watching it being built, I was just always curious about it, you know.
Yeah.
The things you could do with a house.
So Con, in the case of this home, if you don't mind sharing, it can be ballparkish, but a typical home is about 450,000 in this size. Where did this home come in for you? Or maybe the other homes, maybe not Wes's home, maybe the other home across the street that you build exactly the same way. How much did that sell for, if you can share?
I think this one was 5.25, right, Wes? Yep.
Okay.
The one across the street was just under 5, but we didn't finish the basement.
What you did time that we've known each other, but how you care about many big picture things, whether it's connected to your church, things with working with underprivileged youth. Seems like that's part of your decision making in getting this home. Am I right?
You're right. I hate to admit that, but yes, you're right. That was part of the decision making with the home. I've always felt like if you could use less resources, you're going to help the environment. And I went to a energy conference at First Universal Church, at First Universalist, I think it is, and really learned more about the impact that using energy here has in other places, you know, in poorer countries. And so I didn't realize how much of what we enjoy hurts others when we're irresponsible about it. So that also had an impact on my decision to do this, because I didn't need a house. I had a house paid for. I was retired, you know.
So value is beyond the
beyond
ledger
money.
sheet.
I know. I'm probably going to lose my CPA license. But yes, there are valuable things other besides money. There's people's lives and their well-being.
I'm deeply impressed by the passion of this builder and this buyer to have high levels of sustainability in this home that is attainable for middle-income people in our country.
Thank you, SJ, for getting that on there. So I appreciate that. So Ben, one of the things from that clip that comes to mind for me, and you and I haven't touched on this, so just tell me if it's not your area of expertise, but you know, they're alluding to the affordability, you know, of housing. And my company and companies I've worked with, you know, we've done a lot with trying to make more affordable housing, more energy efficient and the like. But are there any stories you can share, any information you can share when it comes to like affordable housing and energy efficiency that either you're aware of or that Alpine Bank has been working on when it comes to finance and how to deal with CHAFA and anything like that you might have some insight on? But
yeah, I don't really have any insight on that in particular. I think probably the third clip that you had in your series with the multifamily in Longmont is probably a really great example of, you know, looking at that affordability piece and making those spaces quite efficient and a little bit smaller, and being able to lower his rents and still keep a profit margin intact from larger, more inefficient spaces. So that would probably be a pretty good example that I would look to. But as far as financing affordable housing projects with energy efficiency measures, I don't have any direct experience with that, unfortunately. So I don't know if I could speak to that.
That is okay. So it's like, one thing I'll ask is Alpine Bank been involved with anything that has to do with like more like, you know, so moving beyond buildings a little bit, but getting into more like utility scale areas? Is there, you know, I know there's lots of private companies, and I think I know Francis with Solar Power Pros being one of the people, since he asked that most recent question, but I believe they're involved with doing some things with larger scale solar. I know a lot of the stuff they do with solar is on buildings, but I'll just ask, is there anything that you're aware of? That
I believe that we've been involved in some community solar projects.
Okay.
The extent of those, you know, David could probably touch on much more than I could and speak more intelligently about that. But I know we have been involved in a couple of community solar projects.
Okay. Well, good. And it's like, one of the things that, again, Ben's referencing David Miller's, a great resource on their green team, you know, being involved with that. Are there things, I know, Ben, you recently stepped down from the green team, but are there things are you aware of some things going on with the green team at Alpine Bank, like coming down the pipeline? Or again, would David be the better person on that?
No, I think, you know, we always have action plans that are in the works. So, as we've kind of evolved through those, there was a lot of, I mentioned our initial energy reduction methods for electricity, water consumption, fleet fuels, and all sorts of different things. And I think now it's really morphed into community outreach, and what are we doing to help our communities become more aware as we kind of go. And a big piece of what we did and continue to do is to educate existing employees and new employees on really the small things that people can do that cost zero money, but can really aggregate to large impacts. And when you think of things like daylighting, how many people walk into their office and just automatically turn on every light in the office when they don't really need to? And,
Right.
It's something that we've really tried to kind of educate people about, to say, we have great daylighting in this particular location. We don't need the lights until a certain point in time. We obviously want to balance that with, not being a dark and dungeness bank that you walk into. And we want our customers to feel like, they're welcome and they have enough light to see. But, in the middle of summer during our operating hours, there's a lot of times where we can probably operate without using our overhead lights. Making sure that lights are shut off and doing those sorts of things. So a lot of action plans about, continually reinforcing those habits and making sure that, our entire workforce is really educated to that. And then the community outreach piece as well.
No, that's great. On the daylighting area, do you know, like in any of your buildings, do you have anything like daylight sensors in any of the buildings that you're aware of?
Yeah, I'm sure we do in certain buildings. The buildings that I've worked in, we hadn't really had a lot of that. But,
Okay.
I think you go back to the first Universalists, right? And one of the best features that they talked about was the Oculus that really lit up their entire auditorium.
Right.
With natural daylight, to where they didn't have to burn a lot of lights in there. And so I think those things, when you really look at being smart design wise, there's a lot of things that you can do that just really reduce your consumption, that are pretty easy if you do them from the start and just design it that way.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, though, it's like there can be things done in retrofit scenarios really well in commercial building. Well, the First Universalist Church is a retrofit project. I mean, it was an addition and then a renovation project, but you can do things very well. But as you were alluding to, Ben, it's like starting with that vision and having that goal of, do you want to be more in harmony with the outside or more in harmony with nature, and take advantage of the fact that we do get, we have beautiful sunshine here a lot of the time, but it's actually not sunshine directly into a building that gives the best daylight. You oftentimes get the best daylighting on the north side of the house or areas that are a little more shaded. But, having that awareness and connecting with architects and contractors and consultants, that work with that to say, how can I be more in harmony with nature with that is a beautiful thing. So one thing I want to make sure, I don't think I've touched on well enough yet, Ben, but are there any, any financing tools within Alpine Bank that you want to touch on that we haven't touched on yet? Otherwise I can go on to some other questions, but I want to make sure I'll let you do that if there was anything you want.
Yeah, no, I think from the consumer side, you're really looking at a cash out refinance or some sort of a mortgage, a construction to perm type situation if you're building from the ground up. All of those are going to require equity and potential capital into the project in the terms of construction. And then the commercial side, really, you're looking at either financing with a first or second deed of trust. And you can structure that, as an interest only line of credit during the construction term and then perm that out, or, some sort of amortizing product. So those are really kind of going to be your basic financing mechanisms that we have at Alpine Bank for these types of projects.
So if someone wants to work with Alpine Bank on, doing a refinance of their mortgage for energy efficiency being a benefit, and of course adding or just making renovations, they should just do that online? Is it best to go to a local branch? Do both? What would you say?
Yeah, so we definitely have a link on our website that if you're interested in a mortgage, you can, click on the link and it understands kind of your zip code and where you're coming from, and we'll ping one of our MLOs to contact you back. People on this call, you can always get in touch with me and I can direct you around. I enjoy doing that and connecting people that way. You can walk into any one of our locations and really ask to be connected to a mortgage officer. So a myriad of different ways, all pretty effective.
Now, one thing I've seen in Alpine Bank, you guys seem to be growing as far as in your locations, because it used to be just kind of central mountains, like the Roaring Fork Valley area, at least is how I've thought of it. But where are you guys all located now? It's everywhere across the state currently?
Well, not everywhere. So we're still, predominantly on the western slope.
Okay.
We're all down the I-70 corridor. Fort Collins will be now our farthest north location. Durango is probably the farthest south. And then we kind of infill from there, through Montrose and back into Junction, obviously the Vail Valley, up through Aspen and the Colorado River Valley. And then on the Front Range, we have several Denver locations. We have Denver Tech, Cherry Creek in our downtown Denver office, Boulder. We just built that building a couple years ago, and soon to be Fort Collins.
Yeah, it'd be very, very cool. Are there any, we're getting close to wrapping up. Are there any features of any of those buildings? I mean, I could talk at quite a bit of what I learned about Ridgeway and Rifle, but are there any features of any of those buildings you want to talk about as we go to a close here? Just, I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you could talk about the Ridgeway building. I like that just because of the natural hot springs that they have in the area and kind of how that building turned out. So you could talk about that one.
Sure, I'll touch on that a little bit. And that's the part that's most intriguing to me, is that they're tapping in using true geothermal heating, because sometimes we talk about ground source heat pumps as being geothermal heat, and it is in a way, but I mean, this is like really, tapping into hot spring waters there to provide, really high effective ground source heat pump heating, into that building. So it's a very cool one. It's not one that's easily replicated. You have to be near some hot springs to make it happen. But I think this is really cool how, you guys were thoughtful of that. Didn't just I guess to the credit of your green team, there are people thinking about that, saying that this is something we should look into as we build this, branch in this area. And there's a resource right here. Why are we not tapping into it, as opposed to, let's just pay the bills and have our, members, have less money coming, just waste money. It's being very frugal, very smart, as I see it, is a big part. And I guess maybe that's a really good way to close, Ben. One of the things I've been impressed with Alpine Bank is you're a financial institution, and yet you guys are showing so many examples of this is what makes sense to do, is to be thinking about making the buildings more energy efficient, or tapping into a hot spring to bring heating into the building that way, or thinking creatively and thinking of community connection. And I'll admit, I think there's a lot of people that think, well, a bank might find this not to be economically sensible, because it's why save the money up front and have more money this way? But you guys are saying, no, we look at this and it makes sense for us to build more efficient buildings and save money in our operating side. So I don't know if you want to wrap with that. We're at 5:29 and we'll wrap up here, but if there's anything more you want to add to that comment. So
yeah, no, I think it's important for us. We are a true reflection of our communities, and we pride ourselves on being a true community bank. So, we feel that that's something that can really help the communities. It can help keep the communities that we love, by, increasing sustainability. So definitely something important for us. And it's why we want to really reach out to people and help them in that journey if they want to go down that. And, there's definitely some times where we say this isn't economical. And that's what we really hope to do, is to be kind of a trusted financial advisor for our customers, to really sit down and talk about the project and not just, say, oh yeah, it will give you a HELOC and do it, but to really ask them, what research have you done, and why is this good, and what else could you be doing? And, hopefully try to educate them and walk them through that, because there's definitely things that may not be economical. And, if we run across those too, we'll be sure to, share that with our customers that, they may want to rethink it. But I think it all comes down to, we love the communities that we serve. We really strive to be a fabric of that. And it's important to us to reflect our communities well. So we think it's an important part of any community, and, we're happy to be in that space.
Well, Ben, thank you for that. That's a great way to kind of wrap this up. And I thank you for the time, and I thank you for what you guys are doing. And folks, I thank you for participating and sending in questions. And this will be available very soon at the Heart. We have recorded this, and it'll soon be up on the Heart of a Building website to be able to access it, and also be at our YouTube channel as well. But I thank you for this, and you can get, if you didn't get a question in, something popped up later. Thanks, Michael. We're getting a thumbs up from Michael Johnson, so thank you. Appreciate that. So yeah, check us out. Look at the Heart of a Building website. If you have questions about financing, in any area, residential, multifamily, commercial, get in touch with Alpine Bank, and you can get in touch with Ben specifically if you're in the Fort Collins area. But also Ben, like you said, he's willing to help you connect to wherever you are in the state, for that. So we thank you so much for the time, and we look forward to you guys being a part of a future episode of this, and looking forward to sharing future Heart, documentary videos from Heart of a Building in the coming months. So thanks, and have a great day, everybody.
And thank you.